Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. So glad that you could join us for another segment. We're going to be speaking with Mr. Gregory Flesher. He's joining us here as President and CEO of Reneo Pharmaceuticals. It's a clinical stage pharmaceutical company tackling the significant unmet need of developing therapies for patients with rare genetic mitochondrial diseases. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Gregory Flesher. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Neil.
Well, give us a bit about your background and talk about how your background led you to become president and CEO of Reneo.
Thanks, Neil. So I've been doing drug development my entire career. I've been in the biopharmaceutical industry since the mid-1990s, and I've worked at both small pharma and large pharma. By background, academic background, I'm a biochemist and a molecular biologist, and I started in the industry at Eli Lilly and Company in Indiana working in clinical development. And over the last 25 plus years, I have had the fortune of working across all aspects of the industry, from the clinical and regulatory side of the organization to sales and marketing and strategy and business development and finance, and have had a really fun time over the last decade or so working at small companies, helping them grow into mid-size, successful biopharmas. It's been a fun ride. And now at Reneo, I joined Reneo because they had a stellar group of employees and a solid board of directors and a product that looks like it has tremendous potential for patients.
Now, it's my understanding that your lead program, REN-001, focuses on a rare mitochondrial disease. What is it, and how does your lead program treat this particular condition?
Sure. So primary mitochondrial myopathies, or PMM, is a disease in which your mitochondria are not functioning correctly, or at least a portion of your mitochondria within the cells. And if you remember from your college days, the mitochondria are called the powerhouse of cells. They are responsible for converting the foods that we eat into energy. That energy is called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, and ATP fuels movement of our muscles and all the activity within our body. And that machinery comes from genes that are primarily derived from the genome of the mitochondria itself. And some of that machinery also comes from the nucleus of the cell. And if there are gene mutations or deletions or alterations, which can happen rarely, but they do happen, it causes the inability of that particular mitochondria to produce the energy when energy demands increase. And under that scenario, cells go under a great deal of stress and they'll die. And so this disease has a tremendous impact on patients. It begins to manifest more in its adolescent years. And then, of course, if you are fortunate enough to live into adulthood, which many don't, the disease has a profound impact on your body and shortens life expectancy.
What are the unmet needs in this condition? Are there several, or is there one that you're mainly focused on?
Yeah, a tremendous unmet need. So today there is nothing approved for PMM. It is a condition in which we could be the first product approved in the marketplace to help all these patients around the world. And we are doing a global development program, so we intend to register the product around the world. And there's really nothing that's been shown to have an effect in this disease in patients. So it's an extreme unmet need, to say the least.
So what are some of the challenges, or the main challenge, in developing a drug for this disease?
Heterogeneity of the patient population. So there are dozens of gene mutations, alterations, and deletions that lead to inability to metabolize carbohydrates, inability to metabolize fatty acids, or other aspects of this type of disease. And so when you design clinical studies, you typically like to have as homogeneous of a population as possible so that you don't have a scattering of data across the board for these patients. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And then the other, it is a rare disease, right? Mm-hmm. So by definition, a rare disease occurs in less than 200,000 patients in the United States. And so trying to find these patients in a disease that frankly is quite underdiagnosed today is a bit of a challenge. That changes when first to market products come. Obviously, when there's companies working to do disease education and awareness, you tend to find the disease and treat the disease more often. But those are probably the two biggest issues in clinical trials: is heterogeneity of the patient population, and obviously identifying patients that are out in the community that have a rare disease.
With this disease being so rare, is it an issue of underdiagnosis or misdiagnosis? Is it very hard to diagnose, being as rare as it is?
It's not as hard as it used to be. And by that, I mean 20 years ago, the confirmatory diagnosis for PMM was a muscle biopsy. And as you can imagine, if you have a 12-year-old child that's exhibiting severe neuromuscular disorders, maybe some CNS-related issues and other health problems, the last thing you want to do is subject them to getting muscle biopsies. Mm-hmm. And that changed about 8 or 10 years ago with the evolution of several companies' genetic testing technology and tools. And so now you can diagnose the disease by getting blood samples or saliva samples from patients, which makes it quite more easy to diagnose. And we have done some work in the United States. I can speak to the United States market. We can identify about 20,000 plus patients mm-hmm. that are in payer databases that have a definitive diagnosis tied to myopathy, mitochondrial disease, and so forth. So there are diagnoses going on in the U.S., which is good. Unfortunately, the answer when patients get diagnosed is, hey, I have good news. We now know what your disease is. Mm-hmm. And the bad news is there's yet nothing approved. Let us refer you to a clinical trial. So that's kind of the story or the path for patients today.
Tell us about the STRIDE clinical trial that you're currently involved in with REN-001.
Sure. So STRIDE is a traditional pivotal trial. It's a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial that has or will have 200 patients with PMM. Half will be treated with our drug for a period of 6 months. The other half will be on placebo for 6 months. And during the course of the study, we monitor several efficacy outcomes or efficacy parameters. For these patients, the biggest issue they face, at least in a clinical trial, is extreme fatigue and weakness. And so there are very well-defined tests, walk tests. We use what's called a 12-minute walk test for these patients. Mm-hmm. That is our primary efficacy endpoint. What we're looking for is a statistically significant improvement in the distance walk in those 12 minutes versus placebo. And we also have other secondary endpoints that are relevant to this disease population, like fatigue and weakness and other physiologic issues that we track along the way. The study's enrolling well. We announced that we'll complete enrollment in the first quarter of 2023, and we'll have data next year. So it's a really exciting time for us as a company that we're roughly a year away from turning the card on a study that could help, hundreds of thousands of patients around the world.
What's next after that year milestone?
Yeah, so we have other things that we think our drug can do. So there are other types of mitochondrial disease where we think this product may benefit. So like many companies that have a single product or a couple products that can do many things, we will continue to invest in what's called the life cycle, exploring other indications, other uses where this product may be helpful. Those uses will most likely all reside around neuromuscular and metabolic diseases, rare neuromuscular and metabolic diseases. And our goal is to get this product to patients as quickly as possible. We intend to build a commercial organization in the United States and in Europe and identify as many patients as we can and see if this product is right for them. And then for other regions of the world, we'll seek partnerships. So we will not build infrastructure in areas like Japan or China or South America. In those parts of the world, there are expertise that exists already, and we will seek partners to get that product to the patients in that part of the world.
Gregory, give us a website where we can learn more.
Sure. So you can learn more about the company at our name, www.reneopharma.com, RENEOPHARNA.com. You can learn a lot more about all these diseases we're currently studying, our pivotal study STRIDE, and learn a little bit more about the data that we generated to date.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I really appreciate the information this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Gregory Flesher. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at Anchor, Spotify, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.